Thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody. It's almost here. Did you wake up this morning knowing that this day was longer than yesterday? Did you feel it? That expansion. You know, this was, I'd forgotten this. I was thinking about it just a few minutes ago. It dawned on me that this is a day, in Roman times, they used to celebrate the solstice. Essentially, they would have a big, I've forgotten the god. It was Sol somebody, this, that, and the other. But in some ways, that's part of why we have chosen the 25th as the day for Jesus' birth, since we don't have a biblical date for Jesus' birth. So we took a date that synchronized well with the dominant pagan ritual of the time, and that's where we are right now. Christmas comes on the 25th. I'm good with that. I don't have a problem with the fact that we didn't know what day it was, and so we just pick a date. It's like everything else, when you don't know, you just do it. You just pick a date. You just start. You launch out. You begin. You doesn't have to be perfect, right? Or you guys have to be perfect. I don't think this is that crowd, but if you are, perfect. I'm going to talk about something which is kind of like being perfect, though, today, which is loving unconditionally. Now, it's kind of the opposite of the way we usually do love. I will love you when you are perfect, but perfect love is loving unconditionally, which means when it's not perfect, when nothing doesn't have to meet your criteria at all, you just love. And this, I think, is the real gem of Christianity, is that the idea is that we love unconditionally. And it's such a lofty goal that most of us find that a bridge too far, but we should hold it out there as an intent. Because there's a tremendous amount of healing, happiness, joy, goodwill, the creation of a good society, the development of families, the creation of a healthy heart, all of that can happen when we love unconditionally, or we love as well as we can. We set the conditions for a good society, for our own families to be in good shape, and also for our own bodies to be healthy. The opening of the heart, the rhythmic love vibration of the heart has been proven to be the best indicator of how long you will live. So if you can get your heart to be in a sense of coherence and open-hearted love, that is your best chance to live a long and happy life, physically. That's worth it. Family-wise, there's no better way to hold a family together than to love each other. You can't force people to get along, but you can love them into it. You can't, I personally am not sure that psychology is smart enough to show people their faults so that they can be transformed without the atmosphere of love to grease the wheel. So even our psychological understanding isn't sufficient without love. And certainly society as a whole is held together much better with love than it is with fear. There have been societies like the Soviet Union held together with fear, but if you've been to one of those countries that was held together by fear, it's not a pretty picture. Countries prosper when they are held together by love. And so from the most isolated to just from the single individual to the family to the state, all of it works better when we're in an atmosphere of love. And so this idea of loving unconditionally becomes the highest goal and aspiration of someone who wishes to be a contributor to their family, to their nation, and who wants to live a long and happy life. So, let's read a little story. When I was a kid, and I grew up in the Christian tradition, so when I was a kid, I heard this story a lot around this time of day. I think many of you did as well. I'm just going to read the Gospel of Luke, the first 20 chapters. So 20 verse, it won't take long. 20 chapters. I didn't have anything prepared, so I think by then I should be done. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was the first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every one into his own city. And Joseph also went from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was, that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And to the angel of the Lord came them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us. And they came with haste, and they found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in the manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad, saying, which was told to them concerning this child. And all that they heard wondered at the things that were told to them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told unto them. I love this story. You know, it's not necessarily factual in the classic CNN style of being factual, but factual more in that it moves us into a deeper place of openness to the divine. And this whole thing with the Gospels is we have 4 Gospels that are contained in the canon of the modern Bible. These 4 Gospels are there largely because they were effective. They were effective in bringing people into a state of experience of the divine in some way. And so they were canonized, and I'm sure there was some politics involved, and we're probably going to be reading the Gospel of Thomas in the month of February, but which is an alternative gospel indeed. But these Gospels, which are narrative Gospels, tell a story, and like many times when you really want to feel or know something, you don't tell it by facts and details, you tell the story of it. You don't tell the statistics. You don't tell the dates are not important. It's the story that carries it. And so this story starts off with this humble beginning of the Christ child, the chosen one, like the one, is born in a humble settings, which should give all of us a clue as to the whole process of becoming a Christed being. That in essence, you don't have to be the great winner in the world to be the Christ in your life. just need to realize that this is who you are. So you think about it, you've got these shepherds. Shepherds don't know nothing, right? They live a very humble existence. They have very, very little in that time. They have probably no formal education. They probably have one change of clothes. They live out in the open air much of the time, tending their flocks by night, right? It's the humblest of experiences. And yet to these humble, uneducated, surprised, I'm sure, people comes a heavenly host, where the host means army, right? That's a lot of angels. And they come to them to say, hey, look, the Christ child is born in Bethlehem. Why don't you go see? And they go. They do. All so far, we are on the bottom rungs of everything. Born in a barn, right? Isn't that maybe not so much this era, but wasn't that an insult just last generation? Right? So this is a very humble place we come to. And we come to this humble place, and this is where the Christ child is born. And this is to whom the Christ child is announced, to the humble. It's a very humble thing. But in humility, we begin to open our hearts to the place where we can love unconditionally. Because it is at the higher levels of judgment and discernment and preference and boundaries and borders and that we make distinctions about who is lovable and who's not lovable. But when we're at the bottom, when we're just us, it was just simple us, we don't make those distinctions as clearly. We're not as, when we're really humble, we're not as able to judge. And not as able to say, you are in the group and you are out of the group. When you're really humble, you're really happy to be anywhere with somebody, somewhere. It's a quiet humility that leads, I think, to us opening our hearts more fully. So it starts there. This story, which is not just a story that was supposed to be historically true about a figure 2,000 years ago, but a story that's used today to awaken us to our own Christ nature. And we start with humility. And we feel into humility. And we feel what it's like to not be one to judge, to not have to know so much to decide if you're worthy of my love or not, to not make big distinctions based on my thoughts as to whether you're in the group or out of the group, but this state of humility in which I can say, you and I are the same. I feel honored to be in your presence, just as you are. So we start with humility, and we add this expanded nature of embracing all that we see. This expanded nature of embracing all that we see is the beginning of breaking down the separateness which is cause of so much suffering in our lives. Most of us, there's an epidemic of loneliness right now, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the separateness that causes every sense of irritation you have in your life. You're irritated because you feel like it's you versus the environment, or you versus the other people, or you separate from someone you wanted to be with, or you, it's like this, there's the world and here's me over here. And I'm a bubble inside this thing. I'm this distinct, separate thing, and therefore I have to be on guard. I have to watch out, and I have to attack, and I have to defend, and I have to set my boundaries, and I have to be strong, and right? It's all that separate sense of self. When we begin to lose that separate sense of self, we don't have to worry so much about the world around us being a threat. We are at one with it. And it comes with a state of acceptance so that you can accept things as they are. Not that you don't change things, but that you can live in a state of acceptance. In acceptance, there is a great deal of peace. I can accept as it is. It doesn't have to conform to my preference. I'm not God. I'm okay with God running the show. It doesn't have to suit me, just like my little preferences. And have you noticed that your preferences really come from a small place inside you anyway, right? Generally. The ones that say, I can't stand this, that's not your biggest self, is it? It's the smaller one. So when we try to make the world conform to our preferences, instead of living in a state of acceptance, then we have reinforced the smallness of who we are again. Now, the Course in Miracles is a difficult book to read, and I mean, you don't skim through it. But I would like to read you a little passage in here. I was talking with Paul before the service, and he said, yeah, sometimes just a sentence is all you can handle for a while. Here's what the Course in Miracles says. You could almost open this book up anywhere, and I could use it as a text. You have so little faith in yourself because you're unwilling to accept the fact that perfect love is you. And you seek without for what you cannot find without. I offer you my perfect faith in you in place of all your doubts. But forget not that my faith must be as perfect in all your brothers as it is in you. Or it would be a limited gift to you. The holy instant, which is the healing of this sense of separateness. And in the holy instant, we share our faith in God's Son because we recognize together He is wholly worthy of it. And in our appreciation of His worth, we cannot doubt His holiness, and so we love Him. Now, that may sound like the Son, the one, only when, little baby Jesus grows up. That one, right? But in this way of thinking, much of what is important is not actually in the visible world. Much of what is important is in the realm of the mind, essentially in the realm of spirit, in the realm of the soul, or whatever you would say, is here, up here, out of sight, essentially. And we are all sons of God at that level. We're distinct and separate at the physical level, but as we move up, we move into this one thing, and there is only one Son of God, which happens to be made manifest in each and every person. And that's how the Christ, when we say, I see the Christ in you, especially when we're doing it, we love you, we bless you, we behold the Christ in you. We're not saying that, hey, you happen to be the one and only, and I don't know, you look a lot like him. It's not that. What we're saying is, that which is universal and divine, I see in you. And so, what this text is saying is that this universal thing, I have faith in your universal Christ, your universal divine aspect, which is one with everybody else's. I have faith in that. And I could not have faith in just yours, or it would be a partial faith. I have to have faith in everyone. So everyone I have faith in, because you're all divine. Maybe not acting divine in this little temporal place right here, but you, at your core, are divine. And the shift of identity of ours from little to grand is the process of spiritual awakening. And the path to doing that, one of the best paths to doing it is unconditional love. Because when you love all things that you can see equally, you erase those barriers that have kept you thinking that they are different and separate, and therefore you are different and separate. But when you see and love the sea of people uniformly, universally, then you move up to a higher state of consciousness, and you move up to a state of being at one with all of it. You become the Christ. I've probably said that better other times, but you get the point that essentially we are not individuals only. We are part of this collective, which is part of the God. And when we love unconditionally, we recognize that we are the one, the collective, and we are the divine. Or you could be your judgmental self. You could be your judgmental self and stay small. Because it's only in judging others that we can keep this awakening from happening. Because it has always been true that we are the divine made manifest here. We keep ourselves from knowing this because we judge and we make some things good and some things bad. And we can love some and not love others. And that making those distinctions keeps us from having the awareness which is already present in us that we are one with everything. We are it. It's almost like stop being a smarty and just be a heart. Just be a heart. And that will be enough. You don't have to go, this person deserves my love, this one doesn't, this one I like a lot, I don't like that one. You just love. And when we love unconditionally, we're not actually concerned too much about who we're looking at. We don't have to tell them what they should be like. We don't have to let our small preferences rule our thoughts. We just love. And then it's not about who's in front of us, but who we are. We are the love. And we're just being love. And just being love, it doesn't matter who we're in love with. They're all the same. As a love being, it doesn't matter. So Jesus is notorious for hanging out with unlovable people, right? You've heard he say that, he would hang out with tax collectors. Well, tax collector doesn't sound so bad in our country, but tax collector was essentially the equivalent of a right to steal. And taxes were extractive. I don't know if you know about the time of Rome, but essentially it was the mafia. And all the money worked its way up the chain. If you were on the bottom, these were extractive taxes. So you make X, well, we'll just take our share right off the top. And it was easy for a tax collector to take more than the government's requested share and keep some for themselves. And so they were despised by people who were living largely in poverty. Most people were very desperately poor at that time, and the disparity of wealth was huge. And that's largely because it went uphill to the top, and the tax collector was the one that extracted the money from the people. And that's an easy person to hate. Right? And here Jesus is hanging out and telling jokes with them. Right? Now that is huge. That's huge. And of course you've heard that he also hung out with prostitutes. A lot of people do that, but I mean, it's in an honor-shame society, those are people that you're supposed to shun in public. Is those people. Well, there were no those people for him. And that's how we should be. We may make decisions about how to organize society or where to spend our time, but as far as the heart is concerned, there are no those people. There's nobody for whom the grace of God is not intended, and there's no one for whom our heart cannot open to them. I think this is the message of Christianity. This is why it's been a great help in many societies, despite some of its failings, but it's been a great help in many societies in changing them, so they began to see that love is more important than brutality or injustice or aggressions. One of my favorite shows, I don't know if you've noticed, but Vikings are in this year, on Netflix anyway. There must be 3 or 4 shows on Vikings, right? And they were pretty harsh people until they were conquered by Christianity. And now they're Norway, Sweden, Denmark, all the fine little countries in Europe that we all admire because they're so socially democratic and people get along so well, right? So it has had a good effect, at least in one part of the world, and it should have a good effect in our own hearts. That this story, which I read earlier, which has this humble beginning of the Christ child, and the humble shepherds come, and all this is happening at night, which adds just to the poignancy of it. It's in the darkness that this light comes. It's in the darkest hours of their work in a scary place with no street lamps, right? In this dark place, these humble people have this glorious event happen. And that glorious event happening is that the Christ is born. And the glorious event happens in us when the Christ is born again, and the method of getting there is to love unconditionally. Now, to get to loving unconditionally, I think we need a heavenly host. We need a bunch of angels to help, because it's a long way from where we are, right? We're very conditional in our love, are we not? I mean, maybe there are a few of you much better at it than I am, but many of us are having a very difficult time with it. We decide who we love and who we don't love, right? No? Yeah, we do. We choose. We choose who to love, and we think that's being loving. It is in a certain sense, but in another sense, the idea is to be love and to let it radiate in all directions without concern about who it's for. And to get there, I think you need prayer. I think you need to ask the divine God, your higher self, whatever you pray or however you pray that you are helped in becoming an unconditionally loving person. It is a wild experiment to do, and it takes enormous amount of transformation. It would be too heavy a lifting for most of us without the divine helping. We pray, we ask, we claim, we command, we do whatever form of prayer you say, but you intend it. And if you intend it and you are willing, then I have the belief that all the help you need will be there to transform our hearts for us to become an unconditionally loving being. And we would be different. And I think, if you think about it, your health would be better. There's a very good chance your health would be better. There's a really good chance your family life would be better. It's a fantastic idea that the community would be better. And if the country did it, can you imagine what a nicer country we would be? Let Denmark eat our dust. We would be like the coolest place on earth. Let's do this. Let's do a prayer. If you're willing, let's do a prayer. So consider the cost of not being unconditionally loving, that you feel separate, that you'd be prone to guilt and anger. You'd be prone to isolation and sadness. You'd be prone to self-judgment. It's a lot. It's expensive. And the rewards for being unconditionally loving, a better world, a better health, peace of mind, angels at your back. Let us pray in our own way, however you do it. Let's set your intention. Your prayer can be as simple as, God, help me be an unconditional loving person. You can claim, I am the child of God that loves unconditionally. I am the child, I am the Christ child who loves unconditionally. You can image an open heart that shines in all directions. It also shines on each of us, doesn't it? When we shine our open heart into the world, doesn't it also release and forgive us of everything we've ever done that has been unloving as we become more loving now? Does it not transform our past as well as our future? Brings all beings under one roof. One tribe, one nation, one race, one species. One. Self-acceptance, acceptance of others. A holy night of peace. The sacred is everywhere. Let us be strong in our intent. Humble enough. Let us repeat this prayer with some regularity, that we might keep ourselves on the path. And come to peace that exceeds all understanding. drop our fear and drop our guilt. Let us open to love. And so it is. Amen. I'm going to ask for the offering in a minute, but I want to just say that a couple of quick announcements. As you know, we have Christmas Eve service at 5:30. 5:30 tomorrow night. It lasts 45 minutes. We light candles and sing Silent Night as we finish, but before we do that, we bless babies. If you got any young'uns in your family, bring them. It's always a beautiful thing to bless some children here. If no children show up, then I'm going to throw myself on the altar and be the one. You can maybe do that. But it's a beautiful ceremony. I hope you'll come. We also have the burning bowl at the end of the year, the 30th. And also around Christmas Day exactly, 2 o'clock, we have a potluck here. Bring something to share and eat with other people. Usually about 100 people show up, but we got room for more. So if you haven't been doing it and are thinking about doing it, please come and do that. And we also are continuing to vote for the Leadership Selection Committee, which is the group that picks the next 2 board members. So if you're a member, and only if you're a member, sign up go to the table there and bring your voter ID, and we'll check you in, and we'll make sure you could get a vote. All right, so we're...